You did everything they told you to. You got the degree, landed the good job, and finally saw those 6 figures on your contract. But then, you're sitting at your desk, looking at your bank account after paying the bills, and it hits you. The math isn't matching. You aren't falling behind, yet you've never felt further from financial freedom. Today, we're talking about the quiet realization that a good salary in today's economy is actually a trap and what you need to change before it's too late. Here's a number that might make your stomach drop. Depending on the year and the survey, a large share of American adults, often somewhere between a third and 40%, say they couldn't comfortably cover a sudden $400 expense with cash on hand. Not because they're broke, because of a specific psychological pattern that happens right around the moment your income starts to feel good. There's a threshold, a very specific dollar range where people mentally stop worrying about money and start spending like they've arrived, right before they've actually built any real safety net. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly where that threshold sits, why your brain crosses it without asking permission, and what to do so a bigger paycheck actually turns into stability instead of a slightly more expensive version of stress. My name is Ely, and I spend way too much time thinking about how people in the U.S. experience money psychologically. If you're someone who earns a normal income, maybe even more than you used to, but still doesn't feel financially secure, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Because what I'm about to walk through isn't about budgeting apps or cutting out coffee. It's about the specific mental math your brain runs every time your income changes, and why that math is quietly working against you. Let's start with the part nobody wants to say out loud. A good salary was never actually defined by a number. It was defined by a feeling, the feeling of relief, the feeling that you finally caught up. And the problem with chasing a feeling is that feelings move the goalposts. 10 years ago, $75,000 sounded like made it money to a lot of people. Today, someone making that same $75,000 in a city with rising rent, a car payment, and a couple $100s a month in student loans can feel like they're barely treading water. That's not you being bad with money. That's the math genuinely changing underneath you while the number in your head stayed frozen in place. Now look, here's the thing most people don't realize. Your brain doesn't process income in absolute dollars. It processes income relative to 2 things: your own past income and the incomes of people around you. Behavioral economists have a name for this. It's called the hedonic treadmill, and it explains something almost everyone has felt but never quite put into words. You get a raise. For about 6 to 8 weeks, it feels incredible. And then, without you deciding anything, your spending quietly rises to match it. A slightly nicer apartment, a slightly newer car, more takeout because you're treating yourself since you earned it. None of these decisions feel reckless in the moment. Each one feels justified, even smart. But stack them together, and 18 months later you're earning more than you ever have, and somehow saving less than you did before the raise. This is where it gets interesting, because there's a second layer happening at the exact same time, and it's the one that really messes with people psychologically. It's called social comparison, and in America specifically, it's brutal because visible wealth is everywhere and invisible debt is nowhere. You see a coworker's new SUV. You don't see their 48-month loan or their credit card balance. You see a friend's vacation photos. You don't see that they put half of it on a card they're still paying off from last year. So your brain runs a comparison against a version of other people's finances that isn't even real, and it quietly concludes that you're behind, even when you're not. Now you might be thinking, okay, Ely, that's interesting, but I'm not comparing myself to anyone. I just feel stressed. Fair. But stress around money in America isn't only about lifestyle comparison. It's structural too, and this part matters. Wage growth over the last couple of decades has been slower than the growth of core costs that actually make up a stable life: housing, healthcare, childcare, and higher education. According to Bureau of Labor Statistics data, wages have grown, but a lot of that growth gets absorbed almost immediately by rent and housing costs rising faster in most metro areas than paychecks do. So even a genuinely responsible person, someone not falling for lifestyle inflation at all, can still feel squeezed because the baseline cost of an ordinary life quietly got more expensive while their salary number just tried to keep pace. Here's where the psychology and the math collide, and this is the part that tends to reframe everything. The American Psychological Association's annual Stress in America survey has repeatedly found that money is one of the top reported sources of stress for adults, year after year, regardless of the economic headlines. Not just for low-income households, across income brackets, which tells you something important. The stress isn't purely about how much you earn. It's about the gap between your income and your expectations, and that gap can exist at $35,000 a year or at $150,000 a year. A good salary doesn't automatically close that gap. In fact, sometimes it widens it, because higher earners often take on higher fixed costs, a bigger mortgage, a nicer car payment, private school tuition, right at the moment they finally have room to save, and that room gets filled before it's ever used. If this is starting to feel familiar, that's exactly why I make these videos. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one, because what we're about to get into is the actual mechanism behind why this happens, and more importantly, how to interrupt it. So let's do the simple math version of this, because numbers make it real. Say you're making $85,000 a year. After taxes, that's roughly $5,000 to $6,000 a month, depending on your state and withholding. Rent or a mortgage payment eats somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000 of that in most mid-sized American cities. A car payment, if you have one, is commonly $400 to $600. Add health insurance premiums, groceries that have quietly gotten more expensive over the last few years, a phone bill, streaming subscriptions you forgot you're paying for, and minimum payments on any credit card balance. And a lot of people are left with maybe $300 to $600 a month of actual breathing room. That's it. That's the entire margin between fine and underwater. And here's the psychological trap. That thin margin doesn't feel thin, because your brain isn't measuring the margin, it's measuring the big number on your offer letter. So you feel rich on paper and tight in practice. And that contradiction is exactly what creates the quiet anxiety so many people can't explain to their friends who assume they're doing great. This is also where identity sneaks in, and it's subtle. Somewhere along the way, a lot of people start attaching their sense of being a responsible, successful adult to their spending level rather than their savings level. Driving a reliable car feels responsible. Driving a nicer car than you strictly need feels like proof you made it. Eating out with friends feels like connection. Doing it 4 times a week feels like keeping up. None of these choices are irrational on their own. The trap is that they all draw from the same limited pool of money, and your brain treats each one like an isolated, reasonable decision instead of what it actually is, a pattern. So what actually breaks the pattern? Not a stricter budget, because most people already know their numbers and still end up in the same place. What breaks it is changing what you treat as fixed. Right now, your bills are fixed and your savings are whatever's left over, which means savings absorbs all the leftover stress and unpredictability of life. Flip that. Treat your savings rate as the fixed cost, the very first thing that leaves your account. Even if it's a modest percentage at first, 10%, even 5% to start. Then let your discretionary spending be the flexible part that adjusts around it. This single reordering is one of the most consistently effective shifts because it stops relying on willpower at the exact moments willpower is weakest, like the end of a hard week when a takeout order feels like self-care. Second, before your next raise even lands, decide in advance where a portion of it goes before it hits your account. Even something as simple as automatically directing half of any raise into savings or an employer retirement match means your lifestyle rises slower than your income, instead of instantly matching it. That gap, the one you create on purpose, is what eventually becomes real financial breathing room instead of a bigger, more expensive version of living paycheck to paycheck. Third, get specific about your actual fixed costs versus your identity costs. Not to shame yourself, just to see clearly. Write down your true fixed expenses, then separately write down the expenses that exist mostly to feel a certain way. You don't have to cut all of them. You just have to see them, because most financial stress isn't caused by one big mistake. It's caused by a dozen small decisions that never got looked at honestly, all at once. And finally, stop measuring your progress against other people's visible lifestyles and start measuring it against your own numbers from a year ago. Is your savings rate higher than it was 12 months ago? Is your debt lower? Is your margin, that gap between income and expenses, wider than it used to be? That's the only comparison that actually reflects your reality, because everyone else's highlight reel was never the honest version of their finances to begin with. Here's the calm truth underneath all of this. A good salary was never the finish line, and it was never supposed to be. It's a tool, and the way you use a tool matters more than how impressive it looks on paper. The quiet realization isn't that you failed. It's that the entire system nudges normal, intelligent people into the same trap over and over, unless they consciously interrupt it. You're not behind. You just found the pattern before it found you completely. Fix the order money moves in. Protect the gap you create on purpose, and that six-figure number on your contract can finally start feeling like the security it was supposed to represent in the first place.